I could drive for like half an hour and find a
Okay.
kangaroo.
Okay.
So, but in Canberra, where I grew up, just your backyard,
Incredible.
because Canberra's known as the bush capital, which because it's like there's like trees everywhere, there's forests everywhere, and it's very
Lovely.
spread out. So there are literally animals everywhere in Canberra, like echidnas, all
Oh,
kinds of birds, snakes, spiders galore.
and see,
Like I
that's the thing
cannot
is,
tell
I don't
you.
mind a snake or like I have such weird tastes about it. Even a spider
Mm.
isn't that bad because I feel like I mean you described ones that jump and rear and all sorts of things, but I do feel
But how big do your spiders get in America? What's the biggest spider you've ever seen?
well, okay, the
Like
biggest spider I've ever seen is
tarantula.
a biggest spider I've ever seen is different. Yeah, like it's is a tarantula probably. Like the average house spider is truly like it's smaller than your eyeball. Like and everybody's got 100 of them in the house at any given time
Hmm.
minimum. And then but then as far as like the largest one that I have seen was probably in Arizona, where that's probably their biggest state. That's their biggest place to
Hmm.
roam. And it was a tarantula, and it had to be probably the size of my face. Yeah, like spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
That's kind of like what
that's
our house spiders are like. Like our
no.
huntsman. Our huntsman. Huntsman's like the most common spider that you'll find in your house. And very regularly you'll wake up and there'll be one the size of your hand that's just like on the wall. And you're like, it's not going to do anything. Like they're not aggressive, they're not violent. They just eat like mosquitoes, so they're
We'll see.
fine.
And that's nice because yeah, we have in some areas there's the whole narrative of like don't kill the spiders, they'll take care of your pest problem, etc. I just couldn't imagine
Yeah.
the pest taker carer ever being as big as my face. That's
Mm,
insanity to me. That I think is the most mind bending like cultural
yeah.
difference between the two countries because it's like literally you come here and like people go out of their way to find like a sickly domesticated bear at a national park to like take a photo with
Right.
it whereas
Yeah.
like your largest mammals are chillin' in the
Yeah.
neighborhoods.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, we have lots of like we have our possum. This is the thing I found really interesting when I came to America and I was talking about possums. Everyone was
Different,
like,
totally different animals.
very different animals because your ones look fucked. Yours
Well,
ones, they're
well,
like
they're
they look
trash rats.
slimy.
They're trash
Yeah,
rats,
yeah.
and they love yeah. They're just little balls of garbage.
Whereas ours are like tiny bears.
Right. No, I've seen a couple of. Well, I guess I wonder if that's the difference between possum and opossum. Because I know that there's
Yeah,
a distinction, and they probably have just fallen into slang. But it's like, yeah, you guys have all these like lovely rodents and marsupials and things that are at least being like, they at least offset everything by being sweet little bears. Are they pests at all?
They are pests, and they're actually also very violent. Like they like attack you as well, and they
Oh
have really sharp
no.
claws. Like you can never touch a possum, and they carry rabies as well, like a form of the rabies virus.
Well, I guess that's kind of like
They're
a.
like a
Rec-
raccoon.
I was gonna say raccoons, which
Yeah,
I personally think are very cute. I love a raccoon.
I didn't see a raccoon when I was in America, and I was
Where did
really
you
sad about it.
visit?
WeHo,
Just
and
Los Angeles. Yeah, you're not gonna find
yeah,
any raccoons in LA.
no, I did LA and I did New York. So I mean,
Okay,
like I didn't venture. Although I climbed up the Griffith Observatory, um,
lovely.
and I wanted to see the mountain lion. But I got told by the rangers because it got dark, and they told me and my friend that we had to go because the mountain lion could actually pose a danger to
A
us.
mountain lion will kill you. Okay, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like yeah, there are plenty of like pretty large dangerous animals because it's like yeah, there are a couple of mountain lions even in yeah like West Hollywood, Los Angeles area.
Yeah,
And I grew up like being in Colorado. I grew up in the mountains like truly podunk.
yeah,
And we regularly had mountain lion watch, and we regular like people lost tons of pets to
yeah.
them, and it got to the point where it's like they were so involved in our daily life that like they did end up getting like hunted down and everything. But I always forget that like yeah, there are big cats here, and like when I think about it. Another experience I had in Arizona, and an animal you'll probably think is strange is there. Oh God, I can't even remember their name, but there is a tiny pig that lives in Arizona. It's technically a rodent, like it's closer related to a mouse, but it looks just like a warthog, probably like the size of
Yeah.
my torso. and they can run at speeds of up to like 30 miles an hour. And and they travel in these small packs, mostly at night, like through the desert. And they will sprint like next to cars, and they will like scavenge entire barbecue areas. Like, I was there with my family in Arizona, and we were like cooking out at this lovely resort. They had a little like grill area and everything, and we would hear like snorting and rustling like in the distance and from the bushes and everything. And a group of them had surrounded our patio in order to converge on us and like strategically take our food. I do need to look up the names, but it's like,
Please.
but
Angry Tiny Pigs. That
yeah,
sounds like most drag queens I know. So that's
and
like,
Angry Tiny Pigs. I hate you. But I do, like, I feel like I talk about these little things enough that like Angry Tiny Pigs is a regular search in my Google thing. Pig rodent Arizona. Go, because I know for a fact there are enough people in the American Southwest that don't know what they are, that are searching like pig rodent. What is this? What am I looking at?
Yeah.
They're called javelinas, and they are not a pig. Yeah, they're closer related to a rat. They look like this, but they look like little boars.
Why is its head so flat like that?
They're built like.
And in a cute angle.
They're they're little tanks. I swear to God. And they run around, and I think they eat the tarantulas around there. But it's like
that thing looks like a flat screen TV with legs.
That's exactly it. And it's like, and they don't pose a danger to humans, but they have an intimidating aura.
Yeah. I feel like that thing could just run straight at you.
Exactly. There was a video that was like viral on Twitter a while, where people would keep changing the music behind it, and it was a video of a javelina racing somebody's car down an Arizona street, and people would put behind it like, making my way downtown, walking fast.
I love that. Isn't that so funny? Like, we were talking about cryptids, but far weirder things exist.
Exactly.
Like, far weirder things exist, and so it's always so funny to me when people are like, yeah, there's a Mothman. I'm like, have you ever seen a platypus? Like, have you ever seen an echidna? Like, these things are weird.
Or it's like, have you seen the average like, there are moths out there that do glow in the dark. Who cares about a Mothman?
I know that. I know. But I think when I was in LA, and they were like, yeah, watch out for the mountain lion, I was kind of like, look, at the end of the day, I face danger every time I go into the bush in Australia. And if the mountain lion's going to get me, well, good on her.
Well, yeah, I love the Australian energy of like, well, of course there's a mountain lion out there. Like, yeah, obviously. I
was like, she'll be right. What's she going to do? Like, and I understand it is dangerous, and they'll probably right to send us down. But it was so funny because I was with my friend, and she's Indigenous, and she was from Canada. And she was like, don't worry, I'm native. Like, the mountain lion will respect me.
We know each other. We know each other.
And I was like, this is a settling energy. If I was going to be in any situation, I trust this one.
Absolutely. And but the article the next day absolutely would have been like, Australian and Canadian tourist found dead in West Hollywood. Like,
mauled on Santa Monica.
Yeah, you rolled down the Hollywood sign into like Kirstie Alley's backyard.
They took us back into Mickey's and just put us in the VIP area, like mauled by a mountain lion.
Weekend at Bernie's kind of propped up.
Mm-hmm. The House of Avalon are like, wow, that's such a fierce look. You really served someone. Like, yeah. That was the funniest thing about being in LA, because I would go from like being like kicked off the Griffith Observatory hill because there was a mountain lion, and then the next night being there with Gigi, just being like, yeah, so I like when I looked at a mountain lion last night, she was like, that's really fierce, girl.
She's like, she's like, I would never do that because I'm kind of shaped like a rawhide bone, so that they're gonna come for me.
It was just, my LA experience, I was just like so chaotic. I was like, I'm gonna just do things.
Well, so okay, so tell me, let's finish off the pod with that. Come back overseas. Tell me about your LA and New York experience. What were the big, not to be doing totally boring interviewer questions, but like, what were the biggest like shocks culturally to you, especially with drag? Like, I'm sure there is a totally different backstage vibe between continents.
Oh, 100%. I was lucky enough to work a bit when I was in America. Like I did, I performed at Evita, and
Mm.
I did Food Bar as well, and I did Club Coming in New York,
Ah,
and
jealous.
also,
I know so many performers and people who are who do shows and stuff out of Club Coming that like it's not even like a lofty goal, but it's like that's where I want to go and perform
oh, it was
for my
amazing.
people, you know.
So I was lucky to actually get that experience, and so I suppose like I did get the culture shock because let me tell you, y'all do not get paid in America, and this
No, we do not.
it shook me to the core
Yeah.
because I was fine with that because I was like, I'm just coming here to have a good time. I don't care. But when they were like, yeah, you'll be taking tips, and I was like, okay, and just tips, and they were like, yeah, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, that is. We could do a whole other episode about that.
Oh yeah. The two things surprised me. Number one, that people do give tips. Because in Australia, I've been tipped maybe 3 times in my entire drag career by the audience.
Yeah,
Like,
so it is more of a
people going
tipping. It is more of a tipping culture, which like on one level it's nice, and on the other side it's like, what if we did away with it and just paid people?
Yeah, exactly. So that was a culture shock. I suppose another culture shock is the way people perform in America. Like in
How's
Australia, you will
that?
get up on stage and you will do a 4-minute choreographed number
Right.
from start to finish that has like costume reveals, it's built in. You don't interact with the audience really. You walk on stage and you serve for 4 minutes and there's no break. When I watched American Drag, it was like you perform for 30 seconds, you walk around to the audience, you take tips, you have your moment, and then you perform for another little bit, and then you have your moment. And so
That
it's very
is,
strange. It was very strange for me to not have like because normally I'm like, my 4 minutes are choreographed. I'm interesting the entire time. I'm not taking a break. I'm not breathing. And then I was like, oh, people don't expect you to perform full out for the 4 minutes.
that's
It was
so, and people will be impressed by it. That's so fascinating to hear because it's like I definitely think. Like, I mean, at each bar in each city, there are definitely queens. Like, I would consider myself a performer who, like, is putting together the full performance from beginning to end, and putting together a concept, the reveals and everything, yada yada. But there definitely is that culture of like, first of all, audience interaction, which like I love. Like I always try to leave the room in my performances for that, where it's like, especially if it's a sexy number, it's like I definitely have my choreography, I know my reveals, but I'm gonna go out into the audience and I'm gonna give this guy attention and I'm gonna do this little thing here and mess with people in that way, and I'm able to improv in that way. But I definitely think it's so fun hearing you describe it from an outside perspective because the performing and lip syncing and then just like going and walking and collecting tips and then performing again thing is a huge, I feel like definitely comes from American like pageant culture because it's like that's very much I think that comes from like the pageant queens being like, I'm doing my ballad and then I'm going to say thank you to this section of the audience and stop lip syncing and I'll be like, thank you so much. Good to see you. Thank you so much. Oh, how are your kids? And that sort of thing. And I've never, just as a performer, like having come from musical theater and stuff before drag, I just couldn't imagine stopping the performance in that way. So, and that's just totally unheard of, that style in Australia at all.
Oh yeah, because what would you do? You wouldn't do anything. Like if you walked up to the audience, they'd be like, "Go back on stage," you know? Because
right. That's
so you'd
so
just be
fun.
walking around just like lip syncing in front of them. It makes no sense. And also another thing as part of that is that none of y'all do production shows, and I'm not sure if that's like a thing there.
Some people do, they're rare, and I want them. I die for that. I tried to create that with the show that I started this year, where I literally had to like find roundabout ways of talking to my cast and everything, and being like, I want you to bring a production number, but I had to find like ways that wouldn't like offend people or make them be like, because the guaranteed pay for each show like isn't there always, or it's not as high as it should be, especially for something where you want like full production. Like people almost get upset when they're like, well, I don't know how much money I'm going to make, so why would I produce like a full big thing? But like me as like a musical theater performer, I want props and sets and choreo and backup and all of that stuff. Like that should be part of it.
It's also like, especially here in Sydney, all of our shows, our classic shows, are three girls on stage at one time doing